Blessed are the peacemakers, so says President Donald Trump. His 20-point Gaza peace plan has delivered a breakthrough. Phase 1 will come into force soon. So is this the start of the eternal peace he promised, or just the latest pause in a seemingly endless fight? We'll analyse all the angles here on Counterpoints with me, Melinda Nusafora. True to his word, President Trump has succeeded where other world leaders have failed. He's pushed through a deal that will see all the hostages released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and a partial Israeli military withdrawal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is selling it as a diplomatic success and a national victory, writing, "From the beginning, I made it clear we will not rest until all our hostages return and all our goals are achieved." But it's the last part of that sentence that has some regional analysts concerned. Far-right members of his cabinet have already said they don't support phase 1 of the deal, let alone moving forward with the broader agreement. And we've been here before. Once in November 2023 and again in January this year. Both times, the path to peace has never progressed beyond the first phase. So, on this episode, we'll ask, is the war really over, or is this just the start of yet another pause? Will Hamas need to disarm in order to keep this ceasefire alive? And how much credit does President Trump deserve? Joining us to discuss the ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel is Yaakov Amidror, a former Israeli national security advisor during a previous Netanyahu administration. Leila Farksak is a professor of political science at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and author of, among others, Rethinking Statehood in Palestine. And joining our panel again is Tobias Ellwood, a former British Middle East minister and Conservative MP. Thank you all for joining us here on Counterpoints. President Trump has described this agreement as a strong, durable and everlasting peace. But is it? Because nothing has formally been agreed to beyond this first phase, which could be viewed as concerning because without concessions from both sides, it could collapse after phase 1, just like the previous deal did. We're hearing that not even the prisoner exchange list has been formalised before President Trump made his social media announcement. So, Yaakov, it's good news, obviously, but is this the end of the war or just the start of another fragile pause?
It very much depends on the continuation of the negotiations that's supposed to begin immediately after the release of the hostages. The intention of the Americans, as was declared in the 21 points plan, is to disarm Hamas, demilitarize Gaza Strip, and to build kind of a mechanism under Mr. Tony Blair, which will be responsible for rebuilding Gaza. So the next two steps is disarming Hamas and demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, which is something that should understood into details. What does it mean? Because from the Israeli point of view, what's important for us is the security of Israel, is to be sure that the Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other terrorist organizations will not have the ability to rebuild their terrorist capability. And Israel will be in a position to destroy any attempt to build such capabilities in the future. Mm-hmm. How the system will work under the new kind of international administration with the coordination with Arab states, which is supposed to contribute to the ability of the Palestinians to disarm Hamas and so on and so forth. all that is very vague in the 21 plan, 21 point plan, and that should be discussed in the negotiations after the release of the hostages. Of course, after the release of the hostages, it will be easier because every Israeli understands that something was achieved, and now we can trust the system, something that in the past we couldn't.
Okay.
But the IDF will remain in Gaza as part of the process, and we have to see how the negotiations will continue after the release of the hostages.
Okay. Leila, what do you think? Are you confident, optimistic? There are, as Yaakov said, so many vague elements of this deal still. Is there enough to hold on to beyond phase one?
Well, that has always been the tricky situation in every negotiation with Israel during Gaza's war, also before 2023. We should not forget, since 2007, there were 4 wars against Gaza in 2008, 2009, 2012, 14, and 21. And in each of these wars, when they ended, the first phase went okay, the second did not. I think now we are in a new situation in which we are coming at the head of a genocide that killed so far 67,000 Palestinians and destroyed all of Gaza. And there is finally seems a commitment regionally and internationally to end this war. The question is how we're going to end this war. So phase one, I think, is happening. It has, we know within the ceasefire is going to take place within 24 hours. The release of the hostages are supposed to happen in by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. I think the key issue will be the entry of aid. That has been a very important condition, and I think it will. The disarmament of Hamas is, of course, a stumbling block with regards to the second phase. But I think the second phase is going to take some time. I don't know, because the Trump 20-point plan is quite vague and meant to be kept vague so that the negotiators can push and direct it to see who can pull more, Israel and the American on one side or Hamas and the Arab countries on the other. What we know is that nobody wants this war to expand. What I suspect is that the war will enter a new phase. So it will be war by new means. Where we're not going to have 100 or 50 Palestinians killed per day, but we're going to have 20 or 30 Palestinians killed per day. It's going to be a question of Israel now agreed that it will control only 53% of Gaza. The question will be, will it retreat into the blue line, as it said, and the red line? That's going to depend on how much the America will continue to push for the implementation of this deal. But what is clear, Hamas has said, is not interested in governing. The focus right now is on the entry of aid and ending the genocide, ending the famine. Don't forget, we had 485 Palestinians who died of famine, of starvation. This has to end, and that will need lots of work because everything is destroyed. So people are hoping that dynamic of making basic needs again will create a momentum of, positive step by step. But we are again in a step-by-step diplomacy, and I suspect the war will continue in new ways.
We're going to focus on Hamas and how that demilitarization could work in a future segment. But first, before we get there, Tobias, I want to bring you in. To your mind, how is this ceasefire or this phase one different to the last deal that was struck back in January when President Biden was in office? I mean, we've been here before.
We have indeed, and it's right to flag that up. There's been so many false dawns here of us taken to the brink and then only for things to then collapse. This does feel very different now. There's a sense of momentum. There are more stakeholders involved supporting what's going on. Additional pressure has come in from the Americans on the Israelis and indeed the Arab community on Hamas. That's led us to today, got used to Trump being rather expressive and exaggerating in his views. And we should perhaps urge a sense of caution, given, as has just been discussed, how fragile everything is here. But there is a sense of optimism, no doubt about it. After 2 terrible years following those barbaric attacks, we could see the beginnings of this with the hostages returned, exchanging chains for prisoners. The question then is will Hamas then drop their weapons? And indeed, will Israel, IDF, pull back? The point about Hamas, which is your question, is the fact that you're dealing with people who sign up to an ideology. So this isn't a form of state or government that's happy to then dissolve because it's no longer popular or it's been told to do so. But you have tens of thousands of people that have bought into that way of thinking, that are happy to give their lives for their cause. And that will be the challenge, is to convince them and indeed wider Palestinians that there is a direction of travel to go to that actually takes Gaza and indeed potentially the West Bank into a more peaceful, stable place. That is supported by Israel itself. And we've not mentioned that there's a vote to take place, I think, in the Knesset as well. There are many that don't want to go down this road at all. There was discussions not long ago about throwing everybody out of Gaza, and actually that Israel would then take over completely. I'm pleased that hasn't happened. But what's good today is the international community, including Britain, that are now standing ready to say, let's open those gates, let's get the Rafah crossing moving, let's get those trucks coming along to challenge the famine, which is now breaking out and ending the squalid humanitarian catastrophe that has been unfolding in front of our eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yaakov?
If I may, I think that the issue of the aid, food, and so on and so forth is more about PR than the reality on the ground. And when the gates will be opened, it will be clear that there is no famine in Gaza. There is no lack of food and water and medicine. Yes, Hamas should release what he confiscated from his own people and selling it in huge prices to earn more money. But there is no lack, not of food, not of water, not of
it's contested. I beg to differ.
Please be a little bit polite. I didn't disturb you when you said all the lies about genocide. I didn't interfere. So let me speak, please. So I think that when the gates will be open, it will be clear that all these allegations are not connected to the reality on the ground. It will be much easier than people think.
Mm-hmm. Leila?
Well, I'll be very happy to hear that there is no famine in Gaza and it's all artificial by Hamas. I'll be very happy to hear that as soon as the trucks go in, people will get their water again, which Israel has destroyed all the supplies to water and electricity and all the food. We have enough facts and documentation. We also saw it with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that people were shot as we're trying to get food. 4,560 Palestinians were killed while trying to get food. So we will not contest now there is famine or not famine. There's enough studies and data to prove it. And also on the issue of genocide, there's enough international and also Israeli human rights groups who testified and argued that there's a genocide. This is not the point. It is a point, of course, because famine and genocide is unacceptable in the 21st century. But also the big question is, how do you want to have security for Israel, as you argued? You said that Israel wants security. Well, you cannot have security if people are starving, and you cannot have security if people are dying, and you cannot have security when people are massacred in this way. So let's hope that now the ceasefire will allow a serious attempt for aid to go in, because we're talking about basics, guys. I mean, the reason why this ceasefire is likely to work, unlike the other ceasefire, is because now the military capability of Hamas has been decimated. This was not on scene in January and February when the hostages exchange happened. I think now Hamas military capability has been decimated. But as your guest also explained, Hamas is not just a military power. Hamas is also an ideology And above all, it's not just Hamas, it's the issue of resistance. People are resisting their oppression in Gaza. This has been a catastrophic war. This has been a horrible war in terms of, this has been a worse Nakba than the Nakba of 1948. But after 2 years of it, I think it is clear that there is not a military solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's only a political solution. And the problem with the political solution is that Israel has destroyed the two-state solution. We have now the destruction of Gaza, and we have also talked about annexation of the West Bank. And we have today 750,000 settlers in the West Bank, which make the viability of a Palestinian state pretty problematic. And the reality we have on the ground, a reality of a one state, which is Israel, controlling 7 million Palestinians between the river and the sea, and in which the prospect of a two-state solution remain very far. And what we're dealing with now is an attempt to provide a humanitarian solution to a political problem.
Okay, Tobias.
It is very peculiar genocide in which the Palestinians are growing from 3 million people 15 years ago to 10, and now there are 7 million. I mean, it's a very peculiar genocide in which the number of Palestinians is growing all the time under the Israeli occupation. It's a very, how to say, inefficient genocide of Palestinians. With all the lies about genocide, just took the number of Palestinians to understand there is no any hint of genocide. By the way, the 7th of October happened when the economic situation in Gaza was much better than in the whole decade before it. So there is no any connection between the atrocities of Hamas in the 7th of October and the objective situation inside Gaza, because what Israel allowed the Palestinians before the 7th of October is to work in Israel, to export to Israel, and they have very good situation economically inside Gaza. So to connect between the results of the war, which are devastating, no question, and inside Gaza, and the atrocities of the 7th of October, which had been done before the war, before the attack of Israel. No Israeli was in Gaza, and the people of Gaza could benefit from the relations with Israel, and they decided, in spite of that, to make what they did in the 7th of October. It's a very peculiar way to connect between the war and the atrocities of Hamas. And Hamas should be destroyed and dismantled. Otherwise, the war will continue.
Okay. Tobias, I know that you wanted to jump in on that earlier as well. Give us your impression on that phase of the discussion.
Yeah. I absolutely agree that Hamas needs to be destroyed. And that's very clear. After the 7th of October, they ruled themselves out from ever participating in the governance of Gaza. The question that you then posed to Israel, particularly to Prime Minister Netanyahu, is what is your strategy to then remove Hamas and offer something else? And up to this point, prior to this plan being put forward, it was not clear, given what was happening on the ground, as to where Netanyahu wanted to take the destruction of Gaza. So what was happening is that people were dying, the buildings were collapsing, infrastructure was being destroyed, aid wasn't getting in, and I can confirm that because the British had to airdrop aid in. So concerned we were from our own analysis that people were starving. We airdropped aid in along with the Jordanians. Perhaps if you allowed media in, then you could have independent views rather than one person saying one and one person saying the other. But back to the main point. Absolutely agree that you need another form of governance. You need to offer the Palestinians a different direction to travel, that is, with Hamas removed. But every time you bomb another area of Gaza and you kill more people collaterally or accidentally or whatever, you drive more people to want to support Hamas. And that is, I say this as a military person, I've been in operations across the world. That is, I'm afraid, the consequence of not having a grand plan, a clear objective of what victory looks like. And only now, as we're discussing, do we have a vision that's come into view that allows the Palestinians to say, yes, I've got something else to live for that does not involve Hamas. And that's a good thing.
But it happened in 2006. Israel withdrew all its forces. All the Jews left Gaza for the Palestinians, and the Palestinians decided in free elections to elect Hamas. So there is no question that there is no any connection between what Israel is doing and the decision of the Palestinians to elect Hamas. After Israel withdrew all its forces from Gaza, Gaza was free from Israelis, free from soldiers, free from civilians, no settlements, no settlers, none. And what the decision of the Palestinians was? In free elections, to elect Hamas. So there is no connection between showing the Palestinians there is an option and the reason of the Palestinians whom they are electing. Because it's happened in 2006.
I don't disagree.
Okay,
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And Hamas won the elections. So what is the
think
connection
this is
between
another-
what Israel is doing and the Palestinian decision?
I
to
don't
elect Hamas?
disagree. I don't
No,
disagree
what-
with
what
any
you
of that.
say-
That is
what
back
you
in
say,
2006.
Show the Palestinian another future, another vision. We did it in 2006.
No, but you had an opportunity.
Okay, can we move on, because there's something more important here, with all due respect. I think in 2006, Israel, 2005 is retreated, but with all due respect, Israel still remained an occupier, because Israel put Gaza Strip under a siege for 17 years, where no water could come in without Israel.
There was an open
There were 4 wars.
No.
There were
Just
4
a
wars
moment,
against
Yaakov, let Layla finish and then we'll come back to you for a response. Just a moment, Layla, continue, please. Go ahead, Layla.
Passage to Egypt all the time.
Layla, go ahead.
Okay, but the
No,
fact is
that's not true.
International legal
What's not
experts
true?
will tell you that, and also Israeli themselves, Israeli legal experts will tell you that Israel wasn't still in control of the Gaza Strip. It's just put a siege around the strip where they could not fish beyond 5 miles, where they could not. Okay, I need to finish what I have to say. Okay, so the point that we're discussing right now is that what the Palestinians choose to elect is their choice. If you call it democracy, if you don't call it democracy and you call it occupation and colonization, then you tell people what they should vote for and not vote for. Hamas won the election of 2006 because of the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. It was punished by it, by the collapse of the government, by an attempt to have a coup in Gaza, and then Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip, and Fatah took control of the West Bank. And Israel was interested, as you know very well. It accepted and coalesced to this arrangement, as we know, and it conducted full war against them. The question now is, how do we move forward? I think Hamas has clearly said it does not want to be in the government. Hamas is interested, and it said it left it to the Palestinian people how they choose to decide and continue their path forward. But they clearly said they don't want to govern. They are accepting the technocratic government that has been proposed by the Trump plan. They are talking about demilitarization. This we're going to see within the details of the second phase, because demilitarization is going to be based also on the Israeli retreat from areas in the Gaza Strip, and also by the guarantees by the US and West and Arab countries, and by the flow and aid and the reconstruction. So it's all tied with how you're going to implement the second phase, in which you guarantee Palestinian a dignity of life and guarantee the minimum of their political rights, which is recognized and protected by international law, and also which will only way to provide peace for Israel.
Do you ready to outlaw Hamas, or we will expect Israelis to agree to an elections in which Hamas will re-elected by the Palestinians?
No, that's not a helpful comment. All this is about removing Hamas. Everybody said this from the very, very start. The pressure that
how you can guarantee that in the new
by
elections,
Qatar, by the United States. Let me finish, sir. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Please let me finish.
Can you guarantee?
We've made it really. You're still interrupting me. You're still interrupting me. Okay, let me finish, and I'm pleased to listen to what you have to say. But all along, the international community has been very clear. I've said it in Parliament. The Prime Minister has said it. I think the American presidents have said it as well. That Hamas has no responsibility to participate in the future of Gaza. So please don't raise this as a concern. I raise the ideology as an issue which needs to be tackled, and there are ways that we can go about that. But absolutely, Hamas should not participate in the future governance and security of Gaza itself. That's partly, I mean, look at the plan. The 20-point plan makes that very, very clear indeed. The question is as to whether or not they will then do so, whether they'll drop their weapons, whether those who choose to leave will then do so. But then, as quickly as possible, we need to develop that technocratic committee and show ordinary Palestinians that don't want any truck to do with Hamas, that there is a future which doesn't involve with an extremist ideology running their place of existence.
Okay, I want to move us on because we're.
One question. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
How you guarantee that in the next elections wherever they will be, the West Bank or in Gaza, how you guarantee that Hamas will not win the election, the free elections? We don't want to be a colonial force to dictate the Palestinians whom to vote for. But can you guarantee that Hamas will not win the elections?
Well, you are a colonial state.
I'm not in a place to guarantee. I'm not in a place to guarantee anything. What is very clear from the 20-point plan, you've got to let me finish, sir. If you keep talking over top of me, then nothing gets heard. What is very clear is that everybody around this table, all the international stakeholders, everybody that's been working on this does not want Hamas to participate. I suspect Hamas will not be allowed to participate in any elections. They'll be outlawed in a new constitution that will then be created. Because if they do, then the very concerns you're raising will then actually bring the whole thing falling down, won't they? And we'll be back to square one with the IDF moving back into the Gaza Strip. And we do not want that.
So, all right, I'm going to move us on because this is exactly what we want to focus on in this next chapter of our discussion, is if this deal is to move forward, it would require concessions on both sides. We're talking Hamas to agree to disarm and accept that it has no future in Palestinian governance. But on the other side of the equation, it's also the Israeli military that must agree to withdraw from the Strip, something that it has been reluctant to openly agree to as well. So, Layla, I want to ask you first off, and then I'm going to come to you, Yaakov. Even if Hamas accepts to withdraw from governance, to lay down its weapons, how do you tackle this issue of ideology that we've been raising here, this idea of an entrenched ideology? How do you tackle
so what
that
is this
kind of
ideology?
radicalization?
Okay, so you need to analyze what is this ideology. Okay, there are those who wish to see that this is ideology is about the destruction of Israel, and those who can look at it that this ideology is about resistance against occupation and oppression. Hamas, as we clearly said, Hamas already said it does not want to be in the government. Hamas will not be in the government. We're going to see what elections will take place. I doubt any elections will take place because I don't know how you're going to organize elections when people don't have water and food to eat in the first place. So the issue of Hamas is not going to be in the government. This is very clear. The second issue will be the ideology of Hamas. The 20-point plan of Trump says that there has to be de-radicalization and changing of curriculum and all that. Okay, this has been tried before. I keep telling you, so long as people are oppressed and so long as people are denied their basic right, they're gonna resist. They might resist with new groups. They're gonna resist peacefully. Some of them are gonna, I think the military option is now out of the question for some, or only because Israel has asserted its military capability in ways that will make it very difficult for anybody to go back to military resistance. But the fundamental question remains, so long as Gazans don't have, and Palestinians don't have independence, don't have their own state that is connected, West Bank and Gaza, and don't have food, economic prosperity, and freedom, they're gonna resist. It's not gonna be Hamas, it could be another party. It could be another movement. It could be another. So being fixated on the Hamas delays you and takes us away from the real issue. What the real issue is, will you implement a two-state solution or will you just continue playing along? Yeah, maybe we'll have it, but we'll continue annexing the West Bank. Yeah, Gaza can stay a poor, decrepit place because the amount of reconstruction it will take will be years. We're gonna see that in the details. I think the phase 2 will be the key in how far you're going to create this technocratic government, how far will you allow aid and reconstruction to start, who is going to be involved in the reconstruction, how much Israel will retreat to allow the reconstruction to happen, because Israel is still occupying the land, and it's unlikely to retreat from the land because it doesn't know what to do with the Palestinians.
Yaakov?
Probably at the end, the demand of Israel will be to have a buffer zone along the borders. Depths will be between 1 kilometer to 1 mile. Other than that, Israel will not annex and will not be inside the Gaza Strip. The government is very serious about it. The right wing in Israel is wanted the Prime Minister to say that Israel will stay in Gaza, and he will refuse to say it. And that is not going to happen. The big question will be the lesson that we learned from the fact that in the previous situation before the 7th of October, there was open border between Gaza and Egypt, unlike what was said here. Israelis were not in the passage in Rafah, and the Palestinians could move in Rafah whatever they wanted, food, water, whatever. So there is practically no siege. The problem was that we learned after the beginning of the war that not only food and water transferred from the Egyptian side into the Palestinian side. And how can we guarantee in the future that that is not going to happen again? And this is the whole problem of what we are calling Philadelphia corridor. It's the Israeli name for the border between Egypt and Gaza. How can we guarantee that no military capabilities will come from the Egyptian side into the Israeli side? And our experience from the past is very, very bad about it.
Okay, I'm going to bring Tobias in a moment, but Yaakov, I've got another question for you. We talked about radicalization and how you tackle that on the Palestinian side, but and, you know, whether if Hamas doesn't agree to not partake in the elections, it could all crumble down. Could the far-right elements of Netanyahu's Israeli cabinet, his cabinet members, could they spoil progress to the next phase as well? Is there equally a risk of radical and extremist views on the Israeli side that could derail progress here?
Today, there are less than the 10% in the Israeli parliament. And I believe that in next elections, if Netanyahu succeeds to achieve what he has in mind, including dismantling Hamas, I think that they would be even less than 10%. And there, as you know, in a democratic system, 10% cannot make the decisions for the government. By the way, within Israel, there's a huge majority for the deal in Gaza. And I don't see the right wing with all their noises that they are doing, and are making a lot of noises in Israel, do not succeed to convince the Israelis to agree not to annexation of Gaza, not to settlements in Gaza, and so on and so forth. So I don't see any reason to believe that they can spoil the agreement. If, and this is the big if the Israelis feel that the agreement guarantee their security. We don't have any claim for Gaza. We don't need anything for Gaza. In 2006, we evacuated everything from Gaza. And Hamas won the elections, and immediately after it begin to attack Israel from Gaza, in spite the fact that no Israeli was in Gaza.
Okay.
So all the nice stories are very nice, but the reality on the ground was that Israel was not in Gaza. There was not siege because the Palestinians could communicate with the other world through Egypt. But you saw the result in the 7th of October. This is something that Israel is not going to take the risk again to face such an atrocities.
Okay, Tobias, how do you tackle this idea of ideology, of radicalization that we've been talking about here? On both sides. I mean, it's not just Palestinians who you could argue have been radicalized after the 2 years of conflict. We've also talking about far-right extremist views in some elements of the Israeli government, even though, as Yaakov says, they don't hold a lot of sway, a lot of percentage within the cabinet. Is there an issue that these seeds are festering on both sides of the conflict? And how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, you illustrate just how complicated this is, and the pitfalls and the problems that lay ahead. I mean, much as we hear what our Jewish friend says here, there are members of Netanyahu's cabinet that have made it very openly clear that they want Gaza to be part of Israel, and they want also to annex all of the West Bank. I'm pleased to hear that that is not going to ever happen. But it wasn't long ago that even you had Donald Trump talking about some sort of Riviera there, with no clarity as to where the poor people of Gaza would actually go. Now it's concrete. It's very clear that this is all part of a plan towards a two-state solution, however far off that might be. And that's important to anchor down and to remind ourselves, because there was a point when we were drifting. And I say this as a military person. I got the impression, and you ask yourself, what was all this destruction doing? What was the IDF trying to achieve, other than make the Gaza Strip so miserable that there was no chance that anybody would want to stay there, that would actually be part and parcel of the strategy to eventually get everybody to then move. Where to? Well, that's another challenge. And the fact that it's completely illegal to move, populations in this way, I think is a headache that eventually even Donald Trump recognized was never going to happen. That's eventually allowed us to get to where we are today.
By the way,
but I would like to go to say a few things about that, because the Israeli right, we see it. I mean, you have extreme right, but not right. But with all due respect, this is a government that has stayed for 2 years, in which you say the 10% hijacked. I mean, I don't know how much they can hijack the government in this way if they stayed for so long. I think also we need to bear in mind there's the extreme right, but there's also the right. I mean, Israel is still convinced that the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, this is a great violation of what a two-state solution is, let alone of what international law says. We've seen the expansion of settlements during the war in the West Bank. I do believe, as you say, Yaakov, that Israel is not interested in Gaza. It was never interested in Gaza ever since it could not annex it or empty it of its refugees in the 1970s under Sharon. Sharon was already clear, okay, let's leave Gaza because it's an expensive thing. And I believe they want to leave Gaza if they can be secure. But the problem is the Palestinians are not just in Gaza. So they're coming back to your point, just refer to your Israeli Central Bureau of Statistics. They will tell you how many Palestinians are in the West Bank, are in Gaza, and are inside Israel. And if you add them up, they come up to 7 million. It's your own data, not my data. So the question that remains, those who are citizens of Israel are citizens of Israel, but what are you going to do with the 5 million that are in the West Bank and Gaza? They, and that we also see in Britain, recognize the Palestinian state, recognize that the annexation of the West Bank is illegal, and it's important to have a two-state solution that is viable. But I'm not too sure Israel is interested in that, because Israel's policy has been to try and eliminate the Palestinian people. And that's the mainstream in Israel, unfortunately, not the little 10%, rather than live with them in two viable independent states.
Yaakov, a response from you, and then I'm going to move us on.
If I may, 3 remarks. One, with all due respect, I think to compare with the radicalism of a terror organization with the right-wing parties in a democratic system like Israel, I think it's a big mistake. You not understand the situation if you think that this radicalism is equal to this radicalism, and there is far-right movements inside Israel, but it is part of our democracy. I'm sure that in many democracies around the world today, there are people which belong to the far right, and many of which are members of the far left, and it's still a democracy with all the problems that it brings to the table. And Israel is a viable democracy and will remain democracy, unlike what we see in the Palestinian side, in Gaza or in the West Bank. The first remark. The second one, the destruction of Gaza is, if you have a military experience, it's very easy to explain. We had to fight a terror organization which decided to wage the war within its own people. And the only way to get them and to kill them, and we didn't kill enough of them, is to destroy the area in which they prepared the war. And they decided, it was their decision, to make the war within the civilian areas in the Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. And there was not any way, and there is no any way. And I spoke with so many experts around the world in the last 2 years. No one offered us a way to fight Hamas without fighting within the civilian areas because it was decision of the terror organization to do it within the civilian area. So all these nice words about the destruction and so on and so forth, if you have any offer how to fight Hamas, how to fight this terror organization within its own community, and how to kill them without destruction, it would be very interesting to hear. There is no way. And to say to us, don't destroy Gaza, meaning don't fight Hamas.
Okay,
You
all right.
this is the right way.
I'm going to interrupt you there, Yaakov.
It's a very bad way.
With all due respect, we just are running out a bit of time, so I'm going to move us on. And, I mean, the war has already raged, so it's a bit of a moot point to discuss, you know, how it should have been fought, because it already has been. So let's talk about how we got here, and we got here because we had a US president that really pushed this deal through. And President Trump remains preoccupied with winning his Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to be the first US president to receive the award since Barack Obama back in 2009. And even though this deal is still in his infancy, perhaps it's a step in that right direction. Tobias, how much credit does Donald Trump deserve for getting us to this first phase and getting it over the line?
I think that he deserves very high.
A huge amount of credit.
Yes, go ahead, Tobias. I'll come to you with that question in a moment, Yaakov. Tobias, I want to bring you back into the discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, there's many stakeholders around the table, as I mentioned earlier, but significantly, it's the American president, because without him, you could not have pushed Prime Minister Netanyahu into coming to the table himself. For too long, I've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu be given a free rein, if you like, to do whatever he likes in Gaza and in the West Bank, with an American president that seemed unable, perhaps, or disinterested is a better word, in what's going on. What Prime Minister Netanyahu did is taking not only Israel, but dragging America into a collision with Iran. And rightly or wrongly, you can say it was overdue, but that's unsettled as well. That's still hanging. It's not been concluded. I'm not sure President Trump wanted to go there, but what he's done now is absolutely been that pivotal influence, but along with the Qataris and Egyptians and others, because Israel's been pressured on one side, and the counterbalance of that has been Hamas on the other, realizing that it's not in their interest to keep fighting, that they will be completely destroyed militarily, even if not ideologically, that there is now an off-ramp to be found. Still very fragile, absolutely. But let's not take away. I mean, a lot of people have views on President Trump, but at this moment, it couldn't have happened without him.
Does he deserve a peace prize, Tobias?
Well, I know that's what he wants. He's made that very clear as well. I don't like the idea that somebody
does he deserve it?
And then the Norwegians being bullied into it. If he was going to get it, I'd prefer him to see him receive it next year when we see that this works. I think the announcement is made in the next couple of days. So it would be premature to then say, give the peace prize, and then sadly see this plan unravel. So a year from now, we'll absolutely know where things stand, and we'll absolutely know whether Donald Trump deserves that Nobel Peace Prize that he's been courting for so long.
You're right, because, I mean, the January deal lasted for 6 weeks. So, I mean, it's very premature to say that it's been a raging success. Layla, what do you think? Do you think that this could have happened? Could we have gotten to this point without President Trump in the White House?
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think Trump has been important, but also don't forget that Israel, the international solidarity with the Palestinian people globally, the growing isolation of Israel has becoming costly both for Israel and the United States. And the United States was concerned about this isolation, which is not good for Israel or for business. And I think also the latest attack of Israel on Qatar in the name of, trying to target Hamas officials in Qatar has been very detrimental also for the relationship in the Gulf, which is a very important and biotic relationship between the United States and the Gulf. So I think Trump had to intervene, and Trump had now the leverage to intervene, because it is not in the interest of Israel that this war continues. It's not in the interest of Israel to continue to be ostracized thanks to the international solidarity for the Palestinian people. And given also that the region is interested in stabilizing the situation, not a continuation of this war, because business does not flourish through war. So I think I would give credit to a little bit of Netanyahu's Sparta discourse about wanting to launch a war on the region and it's the new hegemon. Being the new hegemon in the Middle East is not beneficial for business or for everybody. And I think Trump had to intervene. So he's important because he's also somebody that Netanyahu thought he can have in his pocket. Trump is an entity which is not as controllable as many people think. He's very flimsy. He doesn't care about details. Everybody's trying to manipulate everybody. But the conclusion is, yes, the U.S. intervention was key to making this possible because Israel is dependent on the U.S. and the U.S. can put pressure when it wants, and in this case, it did.
Yaakov, is President Trump a decisive character here?
I agree with Laila that it is more complicated than people think. I think it's a combination. I think that the fact that the president gave Israel the free hand in Iran and even took part at the end of the operation in Iraq was very important to gain the trust of the Israelis and the Prime Minister Netanyahu and what he is saying. I think that the fact that Israel succeeded during the war to eliminate or almost to eliminate Hezbollah and to destroy the Iranian strategy by taking out Syria from the Shiite bridge going from Tehran into the Mediterranean helped the Israeli to feel that there can be more comfort with the situation in the Middle East. I think that the operation in Doha was very important. It made people in Doha understand that they are not immune anymore, and it gave the leadership of Hamas more than a hint that they might be eliminated around the world. And then the president, who understood that this is a very peculiar situation for both the Gulf countries and the Israelis, found the right time and the right way to put it on the table, that could be bought by the Israelis in one side and the Arab and Muslim world on the other side to put pressure on both. But with Israel, it was less pressure than convincing friends that this is the right time to do what is needed to do. Because, as I said, we gain very high trust in Israel by the government and by the people of Israel after how he helped us, based on what he helped us in Iran and in Gaza as well. So I think it was no question. Without the president of the United States, it couldn't work.
On that point of semi-consensus, on a point of agreement, we might leave it there. I will just note for our audience and our other panelists, we've lost our connection with Layla, but we do, of course, appreciate her contribution. So I will thank her, Layla Farsak, the Professor of Political Science at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. We thank her for joining us before her connection dropped. Also to our other panelists, Israeli National Security Advisor between 2011 and 2013 during the past Netanyahu administration, Yaakov Amadror. We always appreciate having you here on Counterpoints, as we do for you as well. Tobias Ellwood, former British Middle East Minister and Conservative MP. It's a really important discussion to have, a little bit of good news, a glimmer of hope. Hopefully we can join you all again soon with more elements of Phase 2 to discuss. Thanks for being here. And thank you to you for tuning in to this episode of Counterpoints. To keep up to date with our latest debates and interviews, you can subscribe to Al Arabiya English on YouTube and also follow us on X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.